Hello everyone and welcome back to the garage. In this video we're going to start part 2 of the restoration on this Bally Flip Flop pinball machine. We're going to fix up all the rest of the mechanical issues, and depending on how long that takes, we'll start the playfield restoration as well. So let's get started. Alright, so let's first start out with the second coin chute relay. That was an issue that I was having in the first part of the series. And I spent some time looking through this machine and I found the problem, and it's kind of an interesting one. So right now I have the machine set to give you 2 credits when a coin goes through the second chute here on the right. And so what should happen is when I press this switch, the second coin chute relay should fire and the credit unit should add 2 credits and fire the knocker twice. But what happens is it'll fire the relay, but it won't do anything else. It's this relay right here. So it fires that perfectly fine, but it doesn't do anything else. But if you take a look at the score motor, watch this little part of it right here when I push that switch. See how it moves a little bit? So that means when that relay goes back out, this one here, it's giving little pulses of voltage to the score motor. And what should happen is it should make the score motor do a rotation, and that's what will add the credits to the credit unit. And one of the switches on that second coin chute relay is responsible for giving power to the score motor, and that switch is fine. I went ahead and cleaned and adjusted all the switches on that relay, so I know it's okay. But the problem is actually the coin chute switch. Because watch what happens when I energize the relay manually. It actually does it correctly. The relay holds in, it spins the score motor, and you can hear it add 2 credits to the credit counter. So why would it work when I energize the relay, but it doesn't work when the coin switch does it? So I took a look at the schematic and I figured out that this coin switch is actually a make-break switch. You can see there are 3 wires connected to it. So when it's in its idle state right here, there's actually a contact inside this little enclosure that's being closed. And then when the coin pushes that wire down, it opens that contact and it closes another one. And the contact that gets closed when it pushes down, that is what energizes the second coin chute relay. And the other contact that gets closed when the wire goes back up is what allows the second coin chute relay to hold itself on and allow the score motor to turn and complete the credit adding operation. So because the relay itself is fine, it actually works properly, and the coin switch doesn't, that means there's a problem with the switches inside this little plastic enclosure. Now I could go ahead and take it apart and see if I can adjust those switches, but I think it's glued together, so it might be a better idea just to get a brand new coin switch for that chute. So that's what the problem is, and I don't necessarily have to fix it right this second, because I can just configure the machine to do 1 quarter for 1 play, and both chutes work just fine when doing that. So I'll go ahead and put a new coin switch in there once I have one, and we'll see if that problem's fixed. For now, let's move on to the next thing. So let's fix the problem with the flags. So how this machine operates is when you hit one of the targets here, it will flip the corresponding flag back and it will advance your bonus up by 1. So it did just that. But when the flag is flipped, when you hit that target again, it shouldn't flip the flag back, nor should it advance your bonus. It should just score. So this flag is working fine, but flag number 1 has been having a lot of issues. So it works there, but if I do it again, let's see if it does it this time, it flips the flag back and it advanced the bonus up. And in part 1, I showed that if you applied a little bit of vibration to the playfield, it makes a relay click really badly. Well, I've done some looking around, and the relay that's doing that is the one responsible for flag 1. And the reason it's clicking like that is because of this little switch right here. You can see when I move it around, it makes a relay click. So let me show you what's going on with the flag mechanism, because it's actually pretty involved. There's a lot going on when you just do this. There's actually quite a bit going on underneath the playfield, so let me show you that. So looking under the playfield, the mechanism for the 4 flags is right here. And here we have the 4 switches for the targets. And then way in there, we have the 4 switches for the flags. And so what happens is when one of these flags goes back, you can see there's a switch that when the flag is in this position, it presses on top of it. And so that's how it knows the flag is either up or down. You can hear that relay clicking. And so when the flag goes up and down, you can see the switch moving around there. And so what happens is when you hit one of these targets, it will trigger the corresponding relay here for that target. You can see we have number 1 target, 2 target, 3 and 4 target. So that relay will energize, and then that will make one of these 4 relays hold on. You can see we have number 1 through 4 flip. So if I manually energize the number 1 target relay, it's gonna make the flag flip. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that real quick. See that? And then the number 1 flip relay is now being held on, and that is this relay here. And so that's how the game knows that that flag is currently up. And I'm betting that it's this relay, the number 1 flip relay, that is loudly clicking because of that 1 switch underneath the flag. So I'm gonna go ahead and move it around and watch this relay here. Let's see if that's the clicking one. Yep, it sure is. So the problem is actually not this relay. It's working fine. It is energized and it holds on. The problem is that little switch underneath the first flag. It must be a little bit sticky, and so when the flag goes up, it doesn't move up all the way, and so the contact for the switch inside the flag mechanism must be a little bit dirty, or it's not making a full connection and it's causing this relay to click. So what I need to do is clean the switch that is in the flag mechanism down here and maybe put a drop of lubricant in it, and then it shouldn't click anymore. It should reliably go on and off. So just to give you a visual for what's going on with the flag switches, there's a little metal wire here. This is that switch that I was moving around on top of the playfield. And when the flag goes up, it will move that wire up. You can see that the wire moves up, and that's what causes that switch in there to close. Well, that wire is not moving up all the way, and you can see it's attached to a little metal thing down there. So what I'm gonna do is put a few drops of lubricant in those spots where the metal wire is mounted, and then try to clean that switch in there. It's kind of hard to get to, but I'll do my best. And I might as well go ahead and do it to all 4 of them, because I noticed that all 4 were pretty sensitive. So I'm just gonna do it to all 4 of the flags, and then after that, they should be very reliable. And it looks like we're still having the same problems. So you can see if I move this around, you can see how sensitive it is. And these other ones are actually pretty sensitive as well. Just the tiniest little bit of movement will make the relays click. You can see we're still having some issues. So what I need to do is go under there and adjust the switches so that they're a little bit closer together, because I think they're too far apart. You see how when that switch gets closed, it's barely putting any pressure on that shoulder blade. So what you need to do is make those switches a little bit closer together so that it actually puts some pressure on those blades. So that should be the final adjustment to make them reliable. And yep, doing that made it absolutely perfect. So now when the flag goes back up, these 2 lights should come on when the final flag goes up. You can see now it's reliably going on and off. And you can test that for each individual flag. See, number 2 is reliable. Number 3 is reliable. And number 4 is reliable. So now the flags should work perfectly. So that is one issue solved. So you can see that all the problems in this machine so far have been caused by dirty and misadjusted switches. And that's kind of the theme for when you're fixing an electromechanical machine. That's usually where your problems are going to be. And I think that that is where all the rest of the problems in this machine are, because I've noticed that these 4 targets, sometimes when you hit them, the chime will be really quiet, and that's probably because the contacts for these target switches are dirty, so I'll have to clean those. Sometimes one of the kick-out holes gets stuck, one of the switches gets stuck down, and so it'll eject like that, even when it's like scoring your bonus, for example. So I gotta clean those. This flipper is weak, and it's probably because the switch on it is misadjusted, so I have to fix that. The left bumper is weak, it's probably a dirty switch. So you can kind of see, I really need to go through and clean almost all of the playfield switches in this thing to make it reliable and perform well. And since we're on the subject of switches, why don't we go ahead and take a look at these 2 mushroom bumpers and this right flipper and see if we can fix their problems. Sometimes these switches for the bumpers will trigger even when the ball doesn't hit them. And this right flipper is very weak compared to the left flipper. So let's take a look at the switches for those. And what do you know? We have switch problems with both the bumpers and the flipper. So let me show you the switch for this mushroom bumper right here. So that's the switch for the bumper. And so when the ball hits it, it moves up like this and it closes. That switch is way too close together. It should open a lot more than that when it goes back down. And so that's why it periodically scores 500 points on its own, because that switch is so close, sometimes the signal will actually go through that. And as for the upper flipper, this is the assembly for it right here. I'm going to go ahead and move the flipper. You see the switch on there? That should open when the metal part hits it like that. It's not even closing. So how this works is that switch is called the end of stroke switch. And so how these coils are wired is that as the flipper moves up, so as the coil goes in, it gets a higher voltage. And then once it gets to this point, that switch will open. And then that coil will get just enough voltage to hold the flipper up. And that's so that the coil doesn't burn up. So it gets a lower voltage once the flipper is all the way up. And so because that switch isn't closed, it's just getting the lower voltage. And so that's why it's weak. So I need to adjust that switch so that it opens only when this metal part pushes down on it. And for that bumper, I need to adjust that switch so that it opens when the bumper goes back down. So there you go, 2 more switch problems to solve. And after adjusting those switches, I went ahead and just did a play test, and all I can say is, wow, this top flipper is way stronger. Before it barely had any strength to hit over here. Now it can hit these targets with a lot of force. So this is way better. And I also adjusted the switches on this flipper and the 2 lower flippers as well, just to make sure they were fine. And the flags are a lot stronger when the coil goes to hit them back to this position, because I cleaned up those switches. So obviously they were dirty. Those are performing a lot better as well. And I'm not getting the 500 point scoring on its own from these bumpers like I was doing before. So the only big problem left in this machine, I think, is the double bonus. So let's go ahead and see if we can fix that. So for this game, how the double bonus is set up is it will automatically be lit on balls 3 and 5. And you can see here on the schematic, we have the ball count unit disc, which controls the ball in play lights being shown on the back glass. And if you look here, you can see on positions 3 and 5, it will light the double bonus light. But this doesn't tell me how the double bonus works. This just shows the light. So let's go to where the double bonus section is. So here's the spot where it shows how the bonus scoring system works. So you can see, normally to make this 1000 point relay coil fire, the bonus 0 relay switch and the bonus score relay switch have to be closed. And the way that this thing scores your bonus is it uses 2 switches on the score motor. So when your ball goes into the out hole, the score motor will start turning, and switches 3, does that say B? Either B or D. That switch and 6D, those will score your bonus. And so when the bonus goes down, you've heard it, it goes ding, 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 ding. And how it does that is with these two switches. So it'll go ding, ding, it'll close those two switches to make it do that. But when the ball count unit disc is on positions 3 or 5, it adds 2 more switches on the score motor to that path. So it'll be using 4 switches. So when the bonus goes down, it'll be ding, 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 like that. So what we need to do is look at these 2 score motor switches, 4F and 7D, because these are the 2 switches that get added to the path when it scores your bonus. These 2 are for the regular bonus, and so I know these 2 switches are fine. So I'm pretty sure that it's one of those 2 switches that is causing our issue with the double bonus. But I have a hypothesis as to what exactly the issue is. So right now, I have a 5,000 point bonus and the double bonus is lit. And I want you to watch the 1,000 point score reel as I go ahead and put the ball in the out hole. Watch what it does. So when it was trying to score, you saw that the score reel was staying energized the whole time, and it kind of let off a little bit, but usually when it scores your double bonus, this score reel will stay energized the entire time. And I'm willing to bet that since that's doing that, the chime unit coil is getting stuck on as well. So let's look at that. So the thousands chime is the one farthest in on the right. It's this one here. So I'm gonna put the ball in the out hole and we'll see if that coil is stuck energized the whole time. It was. Did you see how the plunger for the coil was energized the entire time? So that basically confirms my hypothesis. So what do I think the issue is? I think our issue is one of these 2 switches is stuck closed. And so that would explain why when it tries to score the double bonus, it doesn't score anything, because one of the switches here is holding the score reel and the chime unit on the entire time. And so when the machine closes the other 3 switches, it's not doing anything because one of the switches here is stuck closed, so it can't do anything. So that would explain the problem we're having. So let's go ahead and look at 4F and 7D and see if there's an adjustment that needs to be made. And that is exactly what's going on. So if we look for switch 4F, 1, 2, 3, 4, F is A, B, C, D, E, F. So it's just below the top switch, the next one down. That is this switch right there. Not this one, the one right below it. That is absolutely stuck closed, and that should not be closed right now. All right, so that switch is adjusted now. It's this one here that I'm moving. So now it's open. So let's go ahead and test out our double bonus. All right, so with the bonus at 9,000 and our double bonus being lit, I'm gonna put the ball in the out hole and let's see if our double bonus works. And there you go. That's our double bonus working perfectly now. And I suppose I should mention, I checked switch 7D on the score motor and it was just fine. No adjustment needed for that one. So our double bonus is now okay. So the last major issue on this game is that it sometimes doesn't have the strength to kick the ball out. So let's solve that now. So you can see here on the schematic, we have the out hole kicker solenoid. And in order for that to fire, a switch on the out hole relay has to be closed. And what do you know? Switch 7F on the score motor has to be closed. So I'm willing to bet that 7F is dirty. I suppose it could be the out hole relay switch as well, but since we've had multiple score motor issues on this game so far, it's probably 7F. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and F is the one right below the top switch. So that is this one right here. And it is adjusted correctly. I went ahead and cleaned it. So let's see if our out hole kicker is more reliable. That does seem a little weak still. So I'll go ahead and I'll clean that switch again and we'll take a look at the out-hole relay as well. So the out-hole relay is all the way down here, right there. The switches do look like they could be adjusted a little more inward. It's not putting a lot of pressure on them. So I'll go ahead and do that, and we'll see if our out-hole kicker is reliable again. Well, that certainly seems a lot more reliable. So what I did is I cleaned up all the out-hole relay switches and that one score reel switch that's responsible for firing the out-hole coil, and I made sure they were adjusted correctly, and now it seems like it's fine. And so with that, I think that is all of our issues solved with this game. It is now fully working. Obviously, I still have to clean out all the rest of the playfield switches to make it perform even better, but we'll do that when I take the playfield apart, when I do the playfield restoration. So the next steps with this machine are work on the coin door because it's got a lot of issues, upgrade the back box to warm white LEDs, and then we'll do our playfield restoration, which will involve taking the whole playfield apart, cleaning everything up, replacing the rubbers, and upgrading it to warm white LEDs, and then it will look really nice. Because there's a lot of lights in this thing right now that are either dim or not making a connection. Like there's one under here that should be lit. This LED here is super dim, so when I get this whole thing restored, it'll look a lot brighter and a lot nicer. And I was actually able to fix a problem in this machine completely by chance. So I was looking at the score motor switches, just checking them over, and I saw one that looked like it was barely making a connection. So I cleaned it and adjusted it so that there'd be enough pressure on that switch. Well, that fixed two problems. Not only did that fix my credit relay problem, where I showed in the first video that when you hit the start button, sometimes the credit unit wouldn't go down, because what I was seeing was sometimes the credit relay would hold on for a few seconds, and that's when it would work. But sometimes it would hold on for just a split second, and that's when the credit unit wouldn't go down. Well, I finally got to the root of that problem, and it was that score motor switch that I cleaned completely by chance. So it fixed that problem. It now works every single time, but, and I didn't expect this, it also fixed our second coin chute relay problem. You can see it now works perfect when I push that second coin chute. So it actually wasn't the coin chute switch that was bad. It was just a dirty contact on the score motor. And so I looked in the schematic to see what that switch did, and it makes complete sense as to why that switch was causing issues. So the one that I cleaned up was 7G. It's this switch right here. As you can see, it goes through a path from here, through a switch on the score motor, 10A, and then it goes through these 5 normally closed switches. Well, those switches go directly to the third coin chute adjustment, and this is one of the plugs inside the machine. So when you put the plug into one of those spots, when you put a coin through the second coin chute, when you have it configured to use the second coin chute relay, it'll give you that number of credits, either 1 through 6. So the reason why it wasn't working is because since the switch was dirty, it wasn't able to send power through this point to get to either of these 4 spots. If I'd plugged the plug in either 5 or 6, it likely would have worked, because as you can see, it's before this switch. It would go either here or there. So that makes sense why this switch was the problem, because now it goes through the plug, a switch on the second coin chute relay, and energizes the second coin chute relay. So that makes perfect sense as to why that switch would have been causing the problem. So I'm glad I found that. I wasn't even looking for that. All right, so since I'm waiting on parts to work on the coin door and the playfield, why don't we go ahead and take care of the back box first? What I want to do is clean it up and upgrade it to warm white LEDs. So I want to show you what it looks like now with all incandescent bulbs so we can compare the two. And I'm planning on keeping those 455 bulbs in it because I think they're in a good spot. So let's go ahead and take off the back glass and upgrade this back box. So So a trick that I learned for removing bulbs out of tight spots like this, because it's real hard to get in there with your fingers, you can just take a plunger rubber, put it over the bulb, and then you can get it out real easy like that. So it saves both your fingers and your time. Oh wow, that looks a lot brighter. And I do think I'm going to put the 455s back in behind the words flip flop, but I just kind of wanted to see how it would look with all LEDs, so I'll probably end up putting those back in. But I do like that a lot better, a lot brighter. All right, so now let's go ahead and work on this coin door. So what I want to do to it is replace this price sign because it's got a big crack down the middle and it's cracked all the way through. I want to clean up all these pieces. I'm going to take this front fascia apart. So I'm going to clean all that up and make it perform really nice. I'm going to put a Bally sticker right here because it's missing. There should be a sticker here. And inside the coin door, I'm going to be cleaning it out because it is quite filthy. I'm going to take the coin mechanisms out because they don't like to accept coins very well. And I'm going to make that actually work as it's supposed to. So let's go ahead and start taking apart this coin door. So to remove the front part of the coin door where the price signs are, you have to remove these 4 screws here, and you'll have to take off this side of this large spring. It's for the coin rejection mechanism, so when you push the button on the front, this spring is what brings it back. And the mechanism is very crunchy. It's not very smooth. So I'm going to be putting some grease in certain parts of that mechanism to make it a lot smoother. So once I remove those 4 screws, the front part will fold down because it's on a hinge. And so now this front part should just fold down. There we go. So now you can see how everything's laid out in here. We have our 3 price signs here, and we'll have to remove these metal pieces here. They're just held on by 2 screws, and then we can get to the price signs and pull them out. The coin reject and the start buttons are held in with a couple C-clips, so I'll remove those just so I can clean inside where they sit and make them feel smooth when you press them. And to remove this entire piece, you just have to unscrew the hinge with these 4 screws there, which I'll do so I can get real good access to the front of the coin door so I can clean it. So let's go ahead next and remove the metal pieces and take the price signs out. So this price sign unfortunately is bad because it's cracked. You can see all the way through, so this one is garbage. The other one I will keep because it's not cracked. So this one here's still good, it just needs a little bit of a cleaning and then it will look nice again. And then since this game doesn't have a 3rd coin chute, we just have a blanking plate here. So it's clear plastic on the back, but the front is just metal. So I'm gonna clean this up and make it look nice because it's got a lot of dirt and sticker residue on it. So take that out as well. And so now I'll remove this entire piece by unscrewing the top part of the hinge. And when you're removing this screw for the hinge, that will also remove this piece. So there's a nut on this side, so you want to remove that nut first so that this piece doesn't fall out. And there we go. That is the front piece completely off. And so here are all the front coin door pieces that need to be cleaned up. But since we only have 1 good price sign, I went ahead and I bought 2 brand new ones that say 2 plays per quarter. And the reason I changed it to 2 plays is because if I look at the coin adjustment plugs inside the machine, the spot for 2 plays per quarter is very clean and all the rest are really dirty. So that tells me that the plug was stuck in the 2 plays per quarter position for a very long time. So that's what the machine was set up for originally. Plus these were a little cheaper than the 1 play per quarter sign, so we just bought those. So those will look nice and good when the coin door is back together. So I'm going to go ahead and clean everything up and we'll see how good the coin door looks. So there's the exterior of the coin door done. New price signs, new sticker, everything's all cleaned up, and it looks really good. So now let's work on the inside of the coin door. So for the inside, I'm not gonna go particularly crazy. I'm just gonna clean off some of the surfaces like here because they got a bunch of filth on them. I'm gonna take out the two coin mechanisms so I can clean them up and lubricate what needs to be lubricated, because this one on the left here has a lot of trouble accepting a coin. And I'm also going to take off this little plate down here for the coin return, because whenever I put a coin through this left chute, it will always get stuck somewhere down here in the coin return, and I have to shake the door real hard to get the coin to fall down all the way. So I'm going to go ahead and take all of that apart. So to remove the two coin mechanisms, you can see they're held in by two little screws right here. Those are screwed into the coin mechanism, so all you have to do is hold this little release lever up and then pull the coin mechanism out from the top, and then you can pull up and out like that. And so to remove this bottom plate, there are 4 screws. You can only see the bottom 2. There's 2 more up here, and then that should come out. Actually, I'm gonna skip removing this because I see in order to actually get it out, I have to remove the housings for the coin mechanisms, and in order to do that, I'll have to take out the entire coin lockout assembly and remove the little wires over here that are a part of it. And I don't really want to have to do that because I don't need to put that much work into it. So what I'm going to do instead is there's this little cover here that covers up a little gap for if you had a third coin chute there, the coin could fall into the coin return through this hole. And there's just a little plate here with 2 screws that covers that. So I'll just go through there so I can clean out the inside of the coin return area there. There, so now I've got a little hole right here to get in that coin return area a little easier so I can clean it out. So that'll work fine. All right, I couldn't help myself. I took one of the housings off for the coin mechanism so I could get this plate off so I could clean inside the coin return, and I'm glad I did that. There's a lot of filth in there, a lot of hair and crap. So I'll go ahead and clean that out. I'll go ahead and put this coin door back together. Well, it's certainly better than what it was. Instead of dirt covering the whole thing, now it's just oxidation. So I've cleaned all of that off. It definitely looks a lot better in person, kind of hard to tell in camera, but now everything's clean. I put new LEDs in, and the coin mechanisms are actually reliable now. And I did have to fix a problem on this door for the left coin chute. This metal piece where the coin slides through was bent really bad, so I took some pliers and bent that back into shape. And that made the left coin mechanism work really good. So I'll show you how reliable it is now. So the left side is good. And the right side is good as well. So that is the coin door completely done. Looks good on the front, looks good inside, and it works like it's supposed to. And another problem I was having was with the coin return. Whenever I put a coin through a slot when the game was off, it wouldn't go all the way down to the coin return just because the inside of it was so filthy. The coin couldn't slide down, and so now that's fixed. If I go ahead and put a coin through, it comes right out in the coin return. And then if I do this side, does the same thing. So that is fixed also. And so with the coin door finished, that is everything done with this machine except for the playfield. But before we start the playfield restoration, there's a couple things I want to take care of inside the cabinet. I want to rebuild all 4 of the flippers because when you push the flipper buttons, the flippers are quite loud. So there's probably a lot of wear inside the flipper assembly. So I want to rebuild those. And I also want to rebuild the chime unit because there's a missing piece and I think it should be a little more pleasant sounding. It sounds kind of, well, it sounds kind of dirty. The sound doesn't resonate very well. So I'm going to rebuild that as well. So let's go ahead and take care of those things. So the chime unit is right in front of the machine, just below the plunger. And these are the 3 chimes that you hear while you're playing the game. So this is the 10-point chime, this is the 100-point chime, and this is the 1,000-point chime. And you can actually take this entire thing out of the machine without even having to take it apart. So what you have to do is take off these 2 wing nuts right here, and then all the wiring for the chime unit is hooked up right down here into a Jones plug. So you can just pull it out, undo the wing nuts, and lift the entire chime unit out of the machine, so you can service it really easily. So with the chime unit out, now we can take a better look at it. So on the inside here, we have our 3 coils that will hit against the chimes while you're playing the game. And a good way to test to see if the coil sleeves are good is just by turning the chime unit upside down, and if the plungers move freely, then the coil sleeves are good. As you can see, they are all doing that. And what happens on these chime units is these little rubber grommets, they isolate the chimes from the metal so that when the coil hits it, it'll kind of reverberate more. These grommets like to go bad. They can start to crack and fall apart, and these ones are definitely starting to crack. They're not hard yet, but they're getting there. So I'm going to replace those while I'm here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this entire chime unit apart, clean it up, and rebuild it, because I bought a chime unit rebuild kit, and that includes new coil sleeves, it includes new rubber grommets and new eyelets. There are these little screws here that go through the chime, through the grommet. So I'm going to put those new parts in, and we'll get this thing cleaned up and put back in the machine. So the first thing we'll do is remove the chime. So I have to remove these 6 nuts, and then I should be able to slide the grommets and the chimes off. Yeah, these grommets are toast. This one's falling apart right as I'm taking it apart. So I'm just gonna rip it apart so I can get this little eyelet out. Yeah, these little eyelets, I'll show them up close here when I'm done taking this thing apart. They are not in good shape, so good thing my rebuild kit has a full set. Oh, this one comes off nice. Oh my gosh. Okay, I am glad I did this. This is not in good shape at all. And you can see how much of a mess the old grommets left on the table here, so those absolutely needed to be replaced. So the next thing we'll do is we'll remove the screws that hold in. There's a couple coil stops on each coil, and so after I remove those, I'll be able to pull all 3 of those coils off, and then I can get to cleaning the chime unit. There's one coil. Go ahead and take the coil stops off, and I'll slide the plunger out. So there's one of our plungers, and I'll take the coil sleeve out as well because I have new ones, so I might as well replace them. And so that is the chime unit completely apart. These metal pieces are all welded together, so it's fully apart. I'm going to leave in these little rubber plunger stops here because they are completely fine, and my rebuild kit didn't come with those. So those will stay in there, but now I'm going to go ahead and clean up all these pieces so that we can rebuild it with new parts. And so there's our chime unit all back together. New rubber grommets, new metal eyelets inside the grommets, and 3 new coil sleeves for the chime coils. But this chime unit has a missing piece. It's this little black box here. It's called a chime resonator, and I 3D printed this, so this is made out of PLA filament. What it does is it allows the chimes to reverberate more, and it's got this little lid piece that goes over the top, and so there's 3 holes that go right below the 3 chimes on the chime unit. So I'll go ahead and find a couple screws that'll fit it, and we'll get that installed on the chime unit. So the first thing we need to do is prepare the chime resonator, and I already went ahead and did the first step, which is pre-thread the screws through these holes. I picked some pretty coarse threaded screws so that it would actually thread inside the filament, and it worked great. So these will be the 2 screws we use for that, but you have to put this little lid piece on. Now the file that I printed, it has a little notch on this side, which corresponds to a notch on the box itself. So we just have to put this on, and it doesn't have to be an airtight seal. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna tape it in place, and that will hold the lid on. And so now with it taped, the lid actually stays with the chime resonator. So now let's go ahead and mount it. It screws into 2 holes in these little brackets here and here. So let's go ahead and put it on. And there is the chime resonator installed, just as if it was the factory part. So now the chime unit is complete. Let's go ahead and put it back in the machine and see how it sounds. All right, the chime unit has been reinstalled. Let's see how it sounds. Well, it reverberates a lot more. So yeah, that chime sounds a lot better. The sound lasts for a lot longer, and that's because I replaced those rubber grommets. So it definitely sounds better. Let's do that again. Sounds a lot more consistent as well, because before, sometimes when it would hit, it wouldn't sound very good, but it's sounding consistent every time. So that's the chime unit rebuilt. A lot better than what it was before. All right, so the next thing to do on this machine is to rebuild the flippers. And so I've already gone ahead and done that to the 2 left flipper assemblies. You can see we have all new parts in those assemblies, and they feel so much better than the original assemblies. Like if I manually push this side here on the right and then do that again on the left, this feels so much better. So that definitely needed to be done. But we still have the problem where when the flippers are energized, they buzz. And I know that buzzing is normal in these electromechanical machines because the flippers are AC driven, but I don't think they're supposed to buzz that loud. So I've been doing some research, and the only other culprit that could be causing the buzzing is the coil itself. You can see the coil's working. It actually works, and the end of stroke switch, which I replaced, is also in adjustment. You can see that it opens when the flipper is at the very end of its travel. So we know that's not the problem, because apparently what can happen with these coils is the windings of the coil can loosen over time, and that can cause any vibrations to be louder than what they should be, even though the coil's working just fine. So I'm gonna replace this coil with a new one, and we'll see if the buzzing goes away. And something else I noticed when I was in this machine is this white wire here. I don't think this is factory, and I think I have an idea of what this is for. So how this game works is when you push the flipper button, since this is a 4 flipper machine, there's a second switch on the main 2 flippers here. And so what should happen is when this switch closes, when the flipper assembly has power, that switch will provide power to the rear flipper assemblies. But what someone did is they put a white wire between this coil, the leftmost lead in that direction, down to the other coil. And I think what that wire is doing is it is making the timing of both of the flippers in sync. So when you hit the flipper button both of them fire at the exact same time, so it's not relying on this switch anymore. And I guess that can be a good thing if you want to improve the timing of the flippers, if you want them both to fire at the same time. But I'm just going to go ahead and remove that and make it stock, because that's kind of how I like to do things. This is what you do when you want to test something, but you don't want to solder the wires to it, because you know that if you do, it's going to end up not working right, and then you'll have to desolder the wires again just to bring it back to how it was before you start working on it. So I've gone ahead and I've wired the new coil up to the left flipper assembly here, but you'll hear if I go ahead and push the flipper button, it still buzzes pretty loudly. So the original coil was actually just fine. It was not causing the buzzing. So what I'm gonna do is just revert it back to the original coil, and that'll be easy because I can just take those clip leads off. I don't have to desolder the wires. And the buzzing to me wasn't the biggest problem. I just wanted to see if a new coil would fix it, because if I go ahead and push the button for a split second, you don't really hear it that much. So I'm just gonna put the original coil back in and we'll call it good. But we still have two flipper assemblies to rebuild, the ones on the right, this one and the one that is under here. So let's go ahead and do one of those together. So first things first, let's get this white wire out of the way, because this is the same type of thing that was on the left flipper assembly to modify the timing of the flippers. So the first thing I'm going to replace is the end of stroke switch, and I'm sure the original's just fine, but I'm going to go ahead and replace it since I have a new one so that it will work just as good as it did from the factory. So I just need to loosen these two screws here that hold on the switch stack, and I just have to remember that the yellow wire goes to the blade closest to the coil, and this red wire goes to the next blade out. Then I can remove this little metal piece, or just have the switch stack fall into the machine. That works too. And this would be a good time to check the other switch and see what the solder joints look like. And I'm going to have to redo this one because the wire is about ready to fall off. So I'm going to go ahead and reflow those. There we go. Now it's nice and rigid. So to make this easier on myself, what I'm going to do is move this switch out of the way, and I'm going to kind of sort of mount the new end of stroke switch back in here so that I can solder the wires to it without this being in the way. So there's the new switch assembly installed, but if I manually energize the flipper, you can see that the crank here doesn't even hit the switches, so I have to adjust them to make them work correctly. And with the switches in adjustment, you can see now when I turn the crank, when it goes all the way to the left, it opens the end of stroke switch and it closes the switch to power the other flipper. So that is how you want that. And so with that end of stroke switch replaced, now I'm going to replace everything else except for the coil here. So it's going to get a new coil stop, new plunger link, new crank, new flipper bushing, and it's all going to perform and look very nice. So I'll go ahead and remove the coil stop first so that we can pull the coil out. That's really not that bad looking. I could reuse it, but since I have a new one, I'll just put a new one in. And so now we can pull the coil out. Coil sleeve is going to be attached to it. There's a little metal washer that's right underneath the coil, so don't lose that. The rebuild kit comes with a new one, but if you want to reuse it, then make sure you don't lose that. But if we go ahead and pull out the coil sleeve here, you can see that this machine originally came with metal coil sleeves. So this is not a nylon sleeve, this is metal. And so we're going to be upgrading this to a nylon coil sleeve so that it doesn't need to be lubricated and the flipper will feel a lot smoother. So the next thing we'll do is we'll remove the flipper itself, and to do that, there are these two Allen screws inside the flipper crank that are screwed in very tight, and those actually hold the flipper in place in the machine. So once I remove those, the flipper is going to be all loose. So I'm going to hold the flipper up so I can get to this one. This sucker's tight, which is good because then that means the flipper is in there good. Well, you know how you can make that easier. Just stick a wrench on it like this and wow, it's bending the Allen wrench. Well, that does it. Yeah, I got it. That should be enough. Now there's one more down here. Let's see if it's not as crazy tight as the other one. Oh, that one wasn't tight at all. Okay then. And so now the flipper is totally loose. You can see the mechanism starting to sag a little bit. So I can pull the flipper out and then let that go. And so here's the flipper. You can see the long metal rod that goes through the flipper bushing here and into the flipper crankshaft. And I went ahead and removed the old cracking rubber from it. So we'll put a new rubber on that when we do the playfield restoration. And then we can pull the flipper crank assembly and the coil plunger right out. And I am going to be reusing the spring because the ones in the rebuild kit are a little bit longer. And I noticed that with those springs, the flippers buzzed a lot louder. So I'm going to clean up the original and reuse it. And the last thing to remove is the little nylon flipper bushing. I'm going to replace that with a new one. And then that just pops right out. And there it is. And so that was everything I had to remove. So I'll go ahead and clean this up a little bit, as well as clean up where the flipper was on the playfield, because it's going to be a lot easier to do that when the flipper is out. So I'll go ahead and do that, and we will install the new parts. Dirty side, clean side. And now we just do everything I just did in reverse. And so those are all the new parts installed, but I still have to align the flipper on the top of the playfield and screw in those Allen screws nice and tight. So what I'm going to be doing up here is right now the flipper is just loose. I'm going to be aligning the flipper with this little dot in the wood right here so that the center of the flipper points toward the center of the dot like that. And for other machines, it's different. Like for example, on this 1978 Williams Phoenix, when you're aligning the flippers on it, when you don't have a rubber installed, you want to make sure that the edge of the flipper touches the dot like that. So it's aligning with the edge of the flipper instead of the middle point. So make sure that you know how to align the flippers on your specific machine. And another thing you want to do when aligning your flippers is, you can see right now the flipper crank is loose, that's just because I haven't tightened the screws yet. When you're actually tightening this, you don't want the flipper crank to be right up against the nylon bushing. You want to leave just the tiniest bit of room in between, because if it's right up against like that, then the flipper is not going to move very easy. So make sure you leave a little bit of room when you're tightening that down. And so that's that. That is a flipper assembly rebuilt, and it feels nice and smooth. And you can see the alignment of the flippers, how the center of the flipper is right in front of the dot. So that is what aligned flippers on one of these older Bally games should look like. And so the only one to do now is the one under here right there. So I'll go ahead and get that one rebuilt, and we'll give those flippers a test. All right, I got all 4 of the flippers rebuilt. You can see they're pretty strong, but they still do buzz quite loudly. And that just seems a little louder than what I think they're supposed to be. So if anyone has any ideas on how I can reduce that buzz, let me know. But with those 4 flippers rebuilt, that is everything mechanical with this machine taken care of. Now it comes down to just the cosmetics. And so that's going to be it for part 2. In part 3, we will focus on the cosmetics of this machine. We'll do the playfield restoration, and I'm also going to restore this back box back to the color it was supposed to be. I'm going to repaint it back to the off-white color that it's supposed to be, so it can look original once again. So look forward to that, and I will see you in my next video.